imagine if I was sitting at my house and suddenly someone came and said, you need to speak like...
You cannot speak English.
You cannot speak English, you have to speak this language.
Right.
And I would feel so...
Hello everyone, from dramas to webtoons to novels, explore Korea story with us. This is Who Reads Story. My name is An Sung-jin, I'm a news reporter, and today we have another guest back with us again. Please introduce yourself.
Hello guys, I'm Madison Champagne and I'm a film major at the University of Utah Asia campus.
So obviously the Korean alphabet Hangeul itself was created and promulgated by the Joseon dynasty's King Sejong in 1446. And I feel like that's kind of how the story started to evolve back from then. And the movie that we'll be talking about is mal-moe, which isn't 100% based on real life, but it still does depict that process of conserving Korean, which is why I guess it might be a little bit more meaningful to talk it with you.
Yeah, sounds great.
Right, so to briefly go over the plot itself, the film mal-moe talks about, as I've just mentioned, how Korean itself was preserved over time. It shows how, people back then created dictionaries to preserve Korean. And most importantly, it really focuses on the human aspect of how people were trying to preserve Hangeul, which is the Korean alphabet. Now, the movie itself is based in 1940, so it is, back in the early days of Korea. And I feel like that historical setting itself was a little bit unfamiliar, perhaps, for those that are not used to it. How was it for you when you were watching the movie?
My first impression? Well, honestly, I feel like when I was first watching it, of course, when you read like the title and also read the description and stuff like that, I thought it was gonna be a very serious movie.
Right.
I thought it was like, oh my god, I'm gonna dive deep into Korean like history.
The history
and everything, and it was like I thought it was gonna be a little bit more serious, but actually they have a little bit more like comedic relief,
right? There are aspects of it,
and actually it made it a little bit more like fun to watch. And I guess like that was my first impression. Like, oh, it's quite funny. It's quite fun,
Right.
The characters are quite like they look so good on screen together, and
right.
It's like I really liked that. So, by the way, we did talk about this before, but is it based off a true story?
Right. So. Partially, it is. The Joseon language dynasty, which comes out throughout the film, was an actual real institute that was back in the Joseon days, but that's merely for motive. As I mentioned, it's not 100% real life stories. Not all of the characters are real. Obviously, some of them are imaginary.
Okay.
And I feel like that's why we should kind of go over each of the characters and delve into them a bit. Obviously, our main character, Kim Pan-soo, he's blind. I don't know if blind is the right word. He just can't read.
Oh, illiterate.
Right, he's illiterate. There we go. Yes, he's illiterate. And he runs errands at the Joseon Language Society, and that's when he realizes the importance of having a language or having Korean, preserving the language or the alphabet of Hangeul itself.
Yeah.
And that's how the story kind of unfolds.
I feel like now, like it's kind of hard to imagine that Koreans couldn't even read and write, Because Hangeul itself is actually, I feel like was one of the easier languages to learn. But they were trying to preserve it, and they were trying to like sit there and show the importance of their language.
And obviously there were a lot of scenes that may have been memorable, but if there's anything in particular that sticks out to you.
Yeah, so we have obviously the character Kim Pan-soo, and actually he's illiterate, right? So throughout the film, he was kind of like a criminal, He was stealing stuff and stuff like that. So obviously, and I remember in one of the scenes that he said, "I can't read this," and I sat there and was like, "What do you mean?
What do you mean
you can't read that?" Yeah, obviously for us nowadays, it's like common that everybody can read, but even back then, it's like quite shocking to see that like a lot of people weren't like educated about that. So the scene that specifically that stood out was when Kim Pan-soo actually learned how to read. Like he figured out that he was reading it, and he was like kind of, you could see his expression where he was like, and he had that moment where he realized that he could actually read.
Right. I feel like becoming exposed to a new language where you have no idea what it is how one probably feels when they're illiterate. Exposed to a language, for example, I don't know, any of the other languages that don't have the Korean or English alphabet may seem unfamiliar for people that don't know about it. And maybe as someone who is also in the process of learning a language, maybe that's why it stood out to you even more. You know, making these dictionaries wasn't something that was straight up done in the surface because, you know, Japanese occupation was also taking place back then. And obviously one major institute or organization that played a role was the Chosun Language Society that we've talked about previously. It was established in 1921, obviously with the goal of researching and understanding the language of Korean.
Yeah, like a research group, right?
Like a research institute,
research group,
right? Basically, it compiles, you know, different grammars,
Yeah.
different punctuations, and kind of.
Yeah.
But you know, to delve in a bit more into it, in 1942, they call this the incident of the Chosun Language Society, and obviously Korea was still under Japanese occupation, and this is when. You know, a lot of these researchers or people that have studied Korean for a really long time were tortured just because of the mere reason that we're using Korean. And I feel like from the side or from the perspective of the Japanese, it was more so seen as a rebellion against them because these Koreans were trying to form and, you know, try to preserve their own language, which in sense also meant that they were trying to build on their national identity, which could have seen as a rebellion for these Japanese people who were occupying the area back then.
Yeah, and it was also quite shocking to me because, I mean, of course, I've never imagined that there would be a day, like, imagine if I was sitting at my house and suddenly someone came and said, you need to speak like...
You cannot speak English.
You cannot speak English, you have to speak this language. And I would feel so like, I can't, it's just crazy to fathom. And I honestly kind of empathize with Koreans a lot on this situation because I feel like it's kind of heartbreaking, isn't it? Yeah, they went through a lot. And I mean, to think that even speaking your language at school is like a crime.
Right, how it's banned.
Yeah, and I saw throughout the movie they had when the kids were caught like speaking Korean, they would get hit with
they would spank them.
They would spank them, and how insane to think that that was even based on real events. That's crazy to me. I just,
And for someone who's studying the language itself, and obviously you speak other languages as well, what do you think are some characteristics perhaps for our viewers who don't know the Korean language itself? Maybe you can give some characteristics or delve into what the language is like for you.
I feel like the deeper you go into it, it's like you find out way more. Like obviously when I was learning Hangeul, you learn about like consonants and stuff like that. And obviously what stands out to me is actually their just writing system. I think it's so smart, like the way that it's laid out. And it's like, because you guys had to take Hanja, because you used to originally use Hanja, right? And you had to take these like really complicated like letters and turn them into their own writing system. And I think like obviously Kim Se-jung did a great job because it's easy for everybody to learn, and even foreigners who come here, I think that it won't take you that long to catch up.
If we were to delve into it a bit more, mal-moe means to kind of put or gather words together, because mal means word and moe means gather, right? Moe comes from the action verb moi다, to gather. And what do you think the title has of significance?
I mean, I feel like it kind of explains itself, like, you know, mal-moe, and like people gathering their identities, you know, gathering like their culture, gathering their people. Like I feel like it reminded me that like, you know, like we don't want to take stuff for granted, you know, and I feel like I don't know. I feel like mal-moe is like the perfect title they could have came up with, right?
Yeah. In a way, it's not only about connecting or gathering words literally, just to create a dictionary and preserve the language itself, but just as you mentioned, it is also about, you know, connecting and bringing in the national identity, the sense of commonality or community for these Koreans who didn't have their own language back then, which is why I guess the title of this movie becomes more significant. Right, so this movie is on Netflix, so for those who haven't watched it yet, give it a chance on Netflix. And that is all we have for today's episode on Who Reads Story. Next week we will be back with another episode talking about Korean content. Thank you, Madison, for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
And we will see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.